denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Tonight, we'll visit an old friend in the family. Yes, that family, the mob. Do you recall the story, The Man for the Job? If not, I'll link it on your screen for those on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the show notes for our podcast listeners. In The Man for the Job, we met two hired hands working for the Gorecki crime family who were tasked with burying a certain item on consecrated ground. And, as usual, things didn't go as planned. Today, we'll catch up with the new boss of the Gorecki family and find out if dreams really do come true. This story is called The Old Blood and was written by A.G. Hilton.
What the hell is taking him so long? Gregor Gorecki sat in the passenger seat of the armored SUV, eyes scanning back and forth over the abandoned factory yard through the tinted glass. The meeting should have begun by now, but those Southside fucks were dragging their feet. If there was one thing Gregor couldn't abide, it was anything that made him wait. Still, he tried to calm himself. This was, after all, an incredibly delicate situation. He needed to stay sharp, project authority, project power. Much to his chagrin, the line of thinking brought him back to old blind Joe. No matter where he turned, the ghosts of the old man lingered, just like the smell of menthol which the cleaners still hadn't managed to fully remove from the SUV. Gregor was glad to be done with the ancient bastard, but he would give credit where credit was due. Joseph Gorecki had known how to project power. He may have been nothing more than a shell of a man by the end. The last time Gregor had seen him, he looked little more than an arthritic corpse presiding over the family's affairs from behind the dark glasses, which gave him his namesake. But he could hold a room's attention. That was the kind of authority Gregor had to establish, and he would do it tonight. No, he would do better. He had cleaned house of the old man's loyalists, ensured the new ranks understood the family's restructured hierarchy. And now he would begin a new and profitable legacy of his own once he brokered this deal with the Southside mob and ended the long-standing war between their families. After all, it was Joe who had insisted on continuing hostilities when there were profits to be made. The Southsiders were eager to offer assistance in removing the old man, and with some additional help from Aunt Kyra, Joe's own sister, it had been done. He had even gone through with Aunt Kyra's strange instruction about preparing the body and having it buried at a particular abandoned churchyard in the country. All this to get things moving, and now here they were making him wait. He drummed his fingers on the car door. His driver, Sal, crunched on a Kit Kat. The man was a cool-headed killer, but goddamn if he didn't have the sweet tooth of a hyperactive kindergartner. Absently, Gregor watched as Sal balled the candy wrapper and placed it, quite delicately, atop the dashboard to join a line of others. Sal had started in on the jumbo bag of Halloween candy shortly after they parked, and the line of wrappers had grown long. "That stuff is going to get you one day, my friend," Gregor said. "Huh?" "That shit." Gregor indicated the wrappers as he pulled a small glass vial from his pocket, tapped out a small white line on the dashboard. "That shit's gonna kill you one day. One day they're gonna have to take your feet or something." Gregor snuffed up the white, and a brilliant white flash went through his head. There's that sharpness. Gotta stay sharp. A knock on the window almost made him jump. Jimmy Tate, a dour-faced man with tired eyes, stood outside. The man was an old hand, years his senior and seasoned under Blind Joe, but had proven himself to be on board with the new program. He had even rooted out a conspiracy to take out Gregor, helmed by another old hand named Damian Kaminsky. He was the type that helped put a mind at ease in these situations. A man who knew how to follow fortune. A good soldier who followed orders. Gregor lowered the window. "Well, are we doing this or they got cold feet?" "We got eyes on them. Just came in through the south entrance. 2 vehicles, about 8 men. "Dreyfus is with them?" "Looks like it." "Showtime, then." Gregor sprinkled a little more of the powder onto his finger, rubbed it on his gums. "Go ahead to the meeting place. Take Tyrus and 2 others. We're here to make peace, so don't get jumpy. All the same, keep an eye out. I don't want to take any chances. Things feel off, I want to know before I even set foot in that fucking place. Understand?" Tate nodded and gave a grunted assent before heading off into the night. Gregor checked himself in the mirror, felt for the reassuring weight of the sidearm in his shoulder holster, and stepped from the vehicle. A September breeze that hinted at oncoming October nights sighed across the dilapidated facilities and moaned through the empty voids of the broken windows. Gregor had been to this place many times before, but tonight he felt as though he saw it with new eyes. The old factory was another piece of the old bastard, a meeting place he had sanctioned. Having to use it rankled Gregor to no end, but soon this ritual too could be cast aside once he established himself. For tonight, at least, he would use the old man's legacy to give him a leg up. Sal's radio crackled as Jimmy Tate gave them the go-ahead. Sal put the SUV in drive and eased deeper into the moldering buildings. After a time, they arrived at an opening at the facility's center. The headlights of their vehicle cut across the open space and fell across several other vehicles idling on the opposite side of the open space. Peering through the tinted glass, he saw Tate and his men waiting, and across from them Dreyfus and his people from the south side. Gregor checked himself in the mirror, sprinkled a little more of the white powder onto his finger, and rubbed it into his gums to keep the fire lit. "All right, Sal, eyes up." The 2 exited the vehicle and began their way across the square. The good fire flared through Gregor's head, had him puffing out his chest as he went. Yet for all this posturing, he felt a nervous tremble threaten his hands. In all truth, he had not slept easy of late, and the closer the meeting had gotten, the more sleep eluded him. No wonder why. Things had been rocky lately. In the midst of rooting out old order loyalists, Sienna, that faithless bitch, had taken some of his cash and run out on him. After all he'd done for the vixen, she had humiliated him, made him look weak when he could afford to project nothing but surety. He would never speak a word of it, but he had started having nightmares after that. Anxiety dreams, where he went to this meeting and did not come out. He would not look the coward now. If he did, they would smell blood in the water. "Well, well, well." A thin man with a bushy iron-gray mustache stepped from amid the south side ranks. "Little Gregor Gorecki. It's true, then. You're the bright new face of the Gorecki operation." "Who did you expect, Dreyfus?" Gregor returned. Dreyfus shrugged. "Can you blame me for wondering? You wouldn't be the first to try to pull one over on the old man. He was harder to kill than a cockroach." "And yet," Gregor motioned around them, "here we are, and here he isn't. Remember that. This is new blood you're dealing with now." A few of the Southsiders shifted at the proclamation, but Dreyfus smiled easily. "Point taken. Now, if you're done with the peacocking, maybe we can talk business." Gregor let the comment roll off him, returned Dreyfus's smile with one of his own. "Business it is, then." Salvatore stood with several of the other Gorecki men as they watched the 2 heads of family who stood apart from each group. He didn't listen to what was said, didn't care. Such decisions were beyond him. He merely scanned the Southsiders with a slow gaze and almost wished for one of them to make a wrong move. But it seemed it would be a boring night. Absently, he fished a hand into his pocket, grabbed a candy bar, and began to slowly chew as he continued to study the opposition. "So," Jimmy Tate was at his shoulder, voice low. "I got a feeling. Go back like you're checking on the car. See if you can take a little walk around the perimeter and be quiet about it. See what you can see." Salvatore looked from Jimmy to Gregor, who was still in discussion with Dreyfus. Gregor had said to keep close, but they had plenty of muscle here, and when Jimmy Tate had a feeling, something was usually up. So, without a word, he retreated from the gathering toward the cars. Once beyond them, he melted into the shadows. The moon hung yellow and bloated above the old industrial park. Under its gleam, the jagged ruins became a vision of a jaundiced, ruined world. Once his eyes adjusted to the gloom, the sickly glow proved more than adequate to guide him as he worked his way toward the Southsiders' flank. Climbing to the second floor of one of the hollow buildings using an exterior stairway, he looked down on the meeting below. He scanned the buildings opposite, but saw no one lurking, no telltale gleam of a rifle's scope. Satisfied nothing seemed out of the ordinary, Salvatore settled into the shadows. He leaned against the railing of a catwalk above the factory floor and watched the proceedings through a nearby window. After a few minutes, he pulled out another mini chocolate bar and began to chew it contemplatively as he tossed the wrapper over his shoulder into the darkness below. His heart leapt into his throat as something tapped him lightly on the back of the neck. He whirled, gun at the ready. Before him, the large room was a yawning void. Vague outlines, some hulking machinery of unknown use, loomed from the floor below. Loose chains rattled lightly in the distance as the September breeze continued its sighing. His eyes scanned left, right, up, down, and found nothing. When no bullet split his skull and no knife in the dark found his throat, he relaxed as his eyes drifted to his feet. The tightly balled candy wrapper lay between them. He rubbed at the back of his neck, recalling the light tap, and leaned over the guardrail to peer at the level below. That's when he saw it, looking up at him. Dreyfus was not sure what to make of this younger Gorecki. Supposedly this was Blind Joe's nephew, but he was a far cry from the old man. Where Joe had presented as a solemn, immovable presence, this man was in constant motion, always fiddling, always eyes darting. It put Dreyfus in mind of a junkie, and yet it had been this Gorecki, not him, who had finally done away with the old bastard. He'd not been speaking in hyperbole when he compared the mobster to a cockroach, and that was far from the strangest comparison he had heard whispered about the man in his time. He would need to keep all this in mind going forward in this new partnership. After all, a junkie can still be dangerous. "It's good to see new blood coming in," Dreyfus said aloud. "Coming in and seeing prophets where the old saw tombstones. The old man is probably rolling in his grave right now." "I know he is," Gregor said in reply. "And much to everyone's relief, I'm sure." Gregor laughed, but felt disquieted at the comment. He too had been trying to make measure of this man, the family's old rival, but his mind kept wandering, as did his eyes, to the looming shadows and the yawning mouths of the broken windows. He was beginning to see little flashes of his dreams playing out before him in a déjà vu. He waited for Dreyfus or one of his men to pull a weapon, and something about the man's last comment got his hand trembling to the point he shoved it into his pocket to hide the motion. A scream suddenly went up into the night. It bounced around the brick walls, echoed in the caverns of the old buildings. It went on, and suddenly rose up to a shrieking high pitch before snapping off, just as suddenly. Hands jumped for guns, confused eyes rolled around, and now the two mobsters stood not as new allies, but wary dogs. Each had drawn his own concealed sidearm.
"I knew it," Gregor spat. "The old man's dead, and you thought you'd make it a 2-for-1, huh? Think you can push around the new guy?" "I came here in good faith, after lending you a hand in your ascension. If there's anyone to call a backstabber, we both know who that is." Gregor clenched the gun so hard the metal grip bit into his palm. This Dreyfus was just like the old man, always looking down, always... Another scream ripped the night, and this time all heads turned in the direction of one of the nearby buildings. It now seemed to loom over them ominously, the echoes of the scream still reverberating through its hollow interior. Dreyfus made a motion, and two of his men started toward the structure. Gregor saw that Jimmy Tate was now at his side, and had also directed two of their men toward the building. Soon the group disappeared from sight. A moment passed without a word, then another. After a time, the group began to relax. Probably it was just some junkie screaming his head off. Then a dark shape sailed across the open space. It passed before the bloated moon until it cracked wetly on the concrete and skidded to a crimson stop between the two mobsters. The head of Sal stared up at Gregor Gorecki, mouth agape, face partially crushed from its hard landing. And before anything more could be said, muzzle flashes lit the windows of the old buildings as the shooting started. Chaos erupted as more shots went up into the night. Gregor saw Dreyfus raise his pistol not in the direction of the commotion, but as if in slow motion, lifted the black void of its barrel to take him in the moment of confusion. He lifted his own weapon, but his arm felt as though it moved through molasses. Just as Dreyfus squeezed the trigger, Gregor was thrown down. Jimmy Tate bowled him over and down, protecting him from the line of fire. Covering Gregor with his body, he squeezed off some rounds of his own, and Dreyfus stumbled back, clutching at his shoulder. "Get up! We have to move!" Tate dragged him to his feet, pulled him along toward the nearest building for cover. The whole time, Gregor felt as though he were not a participant in the events, but rather a third-person observer, because this was exactly like his dreams. The chaos, the betrayal, and now this, taking shelter in one of the abandoned husks. He found himself trying to call more of the dreams to mind, to remember what other images they had held, but they escaped him. "Inside," Tate said, and pushed Gregor ahead into the open door. Then, with a grinding of metal, the meager light from behind was cut off as the heavy door slid closed. "Get a light," Gregor said. "I can't see shit." But there was no reply. "Tate! I said get a light! Hey, Jimmy!" The words died away. He had taken a few steps back the way they had come and bumped into the heavy metal door. There was no Jimmy Tate. He yanked the door, but was met with a rattling, as if it had been chained shut from the other side. "What the hell is this?" he screamed. His voice bounced around the walls in a mockery. He fumbled for his phone and turned on its light to confirm what he had discovered. He had been locked inside. He had but a moment to puzzle upon the strange turn of events before he became aware of just how quiet it was. A few moments ago, the entire industrial park was echoing with gunfire, and now, nothing. He knocked on the door, called for Jimmy once more, but no reply came. Then something shifted behind him, and he turned to face the interior of the building. The stark light of the phone cast black shadows that undulated as the trimmer came back to his hand. Absently, he reached for the small vial of white powder, but found it empty. "Gregor,"
The small vial dropped from his hand. He stiffened, fumbling again for his weapon. The voice, deep and unnatural, had come from deeper within the shadows. Though, try as he might, he could not see a source. Gregor then found himself trying to remember if he had dreamed this part as well, and if so, what happened next. But that was crazy talk, and he wouldn't be cowed by some bad dreams he had. "You got a death wish?" He advanced toward the source of the voice with his weapon extended. "You know who you're messing with? Huh?" A chuckling, dry and raspy, drifted to him. It seemed to come from his left, then from above. He played his light in the direction of the sounds, but saw nothing. "Do you know who you're messing with?" the voice parroted. A trickle of sweat stood on Gregor's brow. He knew that voice. Somehow, warped and distorted though it was, he could almost place it. It was on the tip of his mental tongue. But god damn it, he needed another bump. He wasn't thinking straight with the lack of sleep. Just then, he spotted another door. It was ajar just a little up and to the left, letting in some of the sickly yellow moon glow. He started toward it, lost his nerve halfway there, and broke into a run. He was within feet of the door when Jimmy Tate appeared on the other side, regarded him with a hollow gaze, and slammed it closed. The lock clicked with finality. Gregor pounded his fist on the cold metal. "Jimmy! What is this, you bastard?" "Always a reliable hand, that Jimmy Tate." Gregor whirled, almost discharged his weapon, but he saw no one. "Quit playing games!" Then to the shut door. "Jimmy, you are done when I get out of here! You fucking turncoat! What did the Southsiders promise you?" "Turncoat," came the voice. "There is only one turncoat here, and it is not Mr. Tate." A small object, perhaps a rock or small piece of metal, shot from the darkness. It struck the phone from his hand and shattered it on the ground. As its light blinked out, he brought his stinging fingers to his mouth and tasted blood. At that moment, his mind finally placed the voice, despite its modulation, though it rejected the notion as quickly. The pop and hiss of a match striking came to Gregor, and for a moment he thought he saw a face illuminated. The all-too-familiar smell of a menthol cigarette came to him, and his guts roiled. "Can't be." Slow footsteps began their way toward him from the darkness. Gregor clutched the cold metal of the weapon in his hand and tried to remain calm. "No, Mr. Tate has stayed quite faithful," said the voice. "Mr. Tate knows his place, perhaps better now than ever before. As for you..." The footsteps came to a stop. Despite the blackness, Gregor sensed someone standing not far away. Still, he tried to calm himself. Whatever this was, it had to be a sick joke. He began walking to his left, trying to use what moonlight the grime-covered windows allowed to let him see deeper into the shadows. "I don't know who you are or what you're playing at, but it won't work. You can't be who you're pretending to be." The footsteps resumed, now closer than ever. By now, Gregor could see a silhouette gaining shape as it grew closer and closer. "Wait," he told himself. "Closer. Wait just a little more." "You have such a narrow conception of what can and cannot be, young one. It is a shame, truly. I had intended to initiate you into the great mystery of your own will when you were ready. Alas, you have been a disappointment." Gregor saw it then, the cherry glow of the cigarette as the figure took another drag. It was mere feet from him now. Before the glow could vanish, Gregor brought up his pistol and fired rapidly into the space where the glow had been. He squeezed and squeezed until the chamber was empty. The silence that stretched after that moment seemed to go on and on. Ears ringing, he tried to peer ahead to see where the body had fallen. And as he leaned toward the inky blackness, something moved. A blur of a face exploded from the darkness as something impacted him with the force of a pickup truck. His feet left the ground, and soon he felt the ripping bite of glass as he was propelled through the window to his back. The moon wheeled overhead, and then his back met the concrete ground outside, and all the breath left him. Wheezing and bleeding, he stared upwards into a face he had hoped to never see again. But it was wrong. Old Joseph Gorecki stared down at him, his thin face twisted into a bitter smile. The dark glasses from which his nickname, Blind Joe, had derived, were gone. It struck Gregor then that he had never seen them removed, and now he wished more than anything that they were covering those eyes. Yellow and slitted with inhuman pupils, they leered down at him. And when he opened his mouth, Gregor saw his jaws were now populated by jutting fangs. Gregor screamed and thrashed beneath the crouching monster. A long-fingered hand seized him, held his head still.
Look at me, young upstart. Look upon the true face of the one you would have killed.
Gregor still screamed and raved, unable to move his head, unable to take his eyes from the yellow orbs which bore into his own.
Lucky for you, I am not one to return like for like. No, I prefer to do one better. Mr. Tate.
The horrible face vanished from above him. Instead, Jimmy Tate loomed above him, his gaze strange and vacant. Tate seized him. Gregor twisted and thrashed, prompting Tate to deliver a swift blow to his face that shocked him still. Then Gregor was on his knees, Tate holding his head steady as the monstrous patriarch came forward once more. Gregor's mind flailed about, unwilling to accept his situation, and doubly unable to accept this thing standing before him. In his mind, he mastered himself and came out with an elegant retort. What came out instead was a gibbering,
What are you? You know, young one, only you cannot admit it. Just as you called yourself the new blood, I am of the old blood, and so shall you be.
Joseph Gorecki drew a long nail along his wrist, splitting the flesh there as if the nail were a box cutter. Blood ran, and to Gregor's horror, the bloody wrist was first offered, then pressed to his mouth. He tried to scream, tried to spit, but the foul-tasting stuff ran down his throat, and as he spluttered and choked, darkness crept into the corners of his vision.
Let us start fresh, you and I, young one. There is much that needs doing, much for you to do to set things right.
Gregor Gorecki snapped awake in the back of the SUV as it traveled down a darkened avenue. He just had another one of those terrible dreams. The missing sleep must be catching up to him. His mouth was dry, tasted foul. His head pulsed as with a hangover. A quick bump would set him right. He reached for the small glass vial in his jacket pocket, but found no trace of it. What's more, his fingers were bloody. Hey, Sal, pull over. I don't know what I did, but... Except Sal wasn't in the driver's seat. No, it was Jimmy Tate, eyes fixed on the road, not acknowledging him. Gregor's heart began drumming in his chest. With a shaking hand, he reached up and took hold of the sun visor, pulling it down to expose the mirror. He sat like that for a time, staring, uncomprehending, staring at eyes which looked back upon him, yellowed and slitted.
Ah, the family grows, huh? This one was enthralling, wasn't it? I love a good vampire story. Say, speaking of, did you watch the movie Sinners? If you enjoy good music and a good pair of fangs, you'll definitely want to check it out. I'm beginning to see some threads tied together. Did you notice? Sienna was Gregor's old flame before she escaped his clutches and fled south, where she encountered that dreadful farmer in the story Jaws of Fate. Woof, talk about a rough month. Wouldn't you be curious to see what would happen if the new vampire, Gregor, came face to face with an entirely different type of monster? We'd have ourselves a regular Godzilla vs. King Kong situation on our hands. Perhaps I should be careful what I wish for. If you enjoyed this story, please check out the author in the links below, and enjoy many more of his stories in the playlist on your screen. Please also leave a like on YouTube or a comment on the podcast. I enjoy reading your thoughts about our stories. Whatever you do, keep a dream journal and don't fall asleep.